San Juan is the capital and most populous city of Puerto Rico, as well as the oldest city in a U.S. territory. The city was founded by Juan Ponce de Leon in 1521. Puerto Rico has a tropical monsoon climate with rain throughout much of the year and an average temperature of 27 degrees Celsius. The United States granted Puerto Ricans U.S. statutory citizenship in 1917, and the island is a self-governing government within the United States. The island of Puerto Rico is roughly the size of Connecticut, and according to the 2015 census, it has a population greater than 350,000, which makes it one of the most densely populated islands in the world. San Juan has the largest processing center in Puerto Rico, and the port of San Juan is one of the busiest ports in the Caribbean. The business sector is broken down into three main components: the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector. The primary sector is the foundation of all business and consists of the production of raw materials. The primary sector can be made of agriculture, farming, fishing, forestry, mining, and more. Puerto Rico's economy was based in the primary sector until the 1940s, when tax incentives transitioned the economy into the secondary sector. The secondary sector is the transformation of materials into products through manufacturing. The efficiency of manufacturing is dependent on the technology available. Currently, the economy of Puerto Rico is mainly in the secondary sector. More than half of all manufacturing done in Puerto Rico is attributed to the pharmaceutical industry, with more than 80 plants for pharmaceutical products on the island. The tertiary sector provides services to the public. The tertiary sector can be made up of work in hotels, retail, restaurants, sales, and the public sector. In more recent years, the tertiary sector has included phone, cable, and internet providers. In cities of Puerto Rico like San Juan, tertiary services can be incredibly impactful due to the tourism on the island. As previously mentioned, Puerto Rico had an economy based in the primary sector that relied on sugarcane production up until the 1940s. In an effort to help Puerto Rico emerge from a colonial past, U.S. lawmakers pushed Operation Bootstrap in the 1940s to help industrialize the island. This operation was made of tax breaks for manufacturers, based on the idea that if companies came to Puerto Rico for their manufacturing processes, those companies would then spur the economy because they would get local suppliers and provide steady factory jobs. This made Puerto Rico a tax haven, and the tax breaks caused many American and international companies to move their manufacturing to Puerto Rico. And over the course of decades, the economy of Puerto Rico became dependent on corporations from the mainland United States. One specific tax break that influenced the economy was Section 936, which was enacted in 1976 and allowed for U.S. manufacturing companies to avoid corporate income taxes on products made in United States territories. This caused a renewed surge of manufacturers moving to Puerto Rico, and in particular, there was a flux of pharmaceutical companies that based their production on the island. In the 90s, tax breaks like these were criticized as corporate welfare. In 1996, President Clinton approved a 10-year phase-out of Section 936, and by 2006, when the tax breaks were gone, the economy plummeted and nearly 40% of jobs in Puerto Rico were lost. The Puerto Rican Commonwealth government took on loans to replace the lost revenue, and because of that, today Puerto Rico has nearly $70 million in debt. This is the largest municipal debt crisis in United States history. Over the past several decades, Puerto Rican incomes have stagnated at 35% of the U.S. average income. Puerto Rico also has an unemployment rate 2.5 times greater than the U.S. average and a poverty rate of 45%. The lack of jobs in Puerto Rico has caused mass migration of Puerto Ricans to the mainland United States. Some industry leaders are lobbying for Congress to pass an incentive proposal similar to Section 936 to get the economy of Puerto Rico out of its current rut, but others think that this could cause an artificial stability.
So since 1950, San Juan has seen an increase in annual temperature of around 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, as well as an increase in the number of extremely warm nights, which are nights with temperatures above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The surface water temperatures have also gone up around 3 degrees Fahrenheit from 1910, and the number of major hurricanes, rainfall rates, and their storm surge heights have also gone up. The effects are further exacerbated by San Juan's urban heat island effect as well as the rise in sea level. The population density in San Juan puts an even larger strain on the island's extreme vulnerability to climate change because of the number of lives that are at risk, and this figure shows the decrease in annual rainfall that's to be expected in the region.
Climate change of San Juan is not special. The planet's average Havana, capital of Cuba, a city facing the same challenges like San Juan. Cubans have much to lose if the planet keeps warming. The country has experienced intense droughts and increased sea level rise in the past 50 years. In response, Cuba has begun mapping areas at high risk for sea level rise, moving its citizens out of those regions and raising their homes. These efforts are part of Cuba's 100-year plan, called Project Life, a roadmap to guide the country in dealing with the effects of climate change. It includes a ban on new home construction in potential flood zones, the introduction of heat-tolerant crops to cushion food supplies from droughts, and the restoration of Cuba's sandy beaches to help protect against coastal erosion.
San Juan is a coastal city in Puerto Rico, bordered by the North Atlantic Ocean. As we've stated previously, the San Juan metropolitan area has an extremely high population density, housing about 2 to 2.5 million people. Historically, urban planning for this city has been inefficient, leading to urban sprawl, the uncontrolled and unrestricted expansion of urban areas. The high demand for residential property and massively inefficient transportation infrastructure throughout the city has led to numerous issues for citizens. Homes in this area are highly vulnerable to extreme climate, many of them structurally inequipped to withstand large storms. Inefficiently connected roadways and electric lines only exacerbate this problem. The government of San Juan acknowledges the relevance of climate change in modern times and understands that as an especially vulnerable area to extreme weather conditions, they must take this matter seriously. Key concerns for the region include accommodating the large residential population in such condensed space, while ensuring that areas nearby to flood zones are protected against hazardous storms. As a coastal city, San Juan has a high need for renovating existing structures to ensure that the city is able to withstand the changing climate, specifically the effects of a rising sea level. Last, due to the city's battles with urban sprawl, traffic is often congested and not well connected for pedestrian or bike travel. This increases the amount of pollution emitted by the city to surrounding bodies of water and air. Drastic action by way of urban planning will need to be undertaken to regulate industry within the metropolitan area and reduce the effects of pollution on the surrounding environment. Puerto Rico has released a pledge for climate change that includes significant benchmarks for where the city wants to be in the future. They plan to run off of 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. The implications of this goal for city planning involve renovating existing coal and natural gas plants to either be transitioned as renewable plants or used for some other purpose. Typically, contamination at sites such as these will call for remediation of efforts before the land can be repurposed, and even then, the land may still be restricted from certain uses. The region also intends to plant 500,000 trees in the next 5 years, preceded by increased efforts for reforestation in the years that follow. This is a necessary step in absorbing atmospheric carbon. However, it does come with some challenges in terms of urban planning. This effort limits the amount of available land area for development, potentially increasing the prices of housing. One of the most important goals in this pledge is the idea of creating more resilient construction codes. It is extremely necessary that San Juan renovate existing buildings to be more climate resilient and implement soft and hard barriers around the city to absorb energy and flooding impacts from storms. Another major benchmark is the goal to reduce the region's carbon footprint by half in the next 5 years. To do this, it is definitely necessary that the city become much more interconnected, encouraging citizens to walk and bike as opposed to travel by car. To summarize, urban planning for San Juan in the face of climate change should focus on prioritizing resilience of vital structures such as homes, hospitals, generation plants, and water resource facilities. Also, to achieve a smaller carbon footprint, the city will have to tackle its issues with historical urban sprawl, creating a more sustainable transportation infrastructure, and regulating emissions from industry to the surrounding air and water.
These are the 16 sectors of critical infrastructure as identified by the U.S. Homeland of Security. A study of San Juan was done in 2011, and they found the ones in bold to be most important to San Juan's functioning. These are the ones that will be most affected by global warming and need to be taken care of first if disaster strikes. These consist of commercial facilities, energy, healthcare and public health, nuclear reactors, materials and waste, transportation, and wastewater. Since Puerto Rico is such a small island country, obviously one of the biggest risks to its infrastructure comes from the sea level rising. The city only lies 26 feet above sea level and is wedged between the Caribbean Sea and the North Atlantic Ocean, which is what San Juan lies on. With the polar ice caps melting and sea levels continuing to rise, it may only be a matter of time before the entire island, and San Juan especially, is swallowed up by water. Being an island country means the entire coast is constantly battling coastal erosion. The higher the sea level is, the worse the erosion gets. The biggest threats may come from singular weather events such as storm surges, hurricanes, and tsunamis. Back in 2017, Hurricane Maria devastated the city as well as the entire island, leaving them without power and causing upwards of $94 billion in damages. Obviously, another hurricane anytime soon or in the future could be just as bad, if not worse. Along with this comes storm surges. With hurricanes trending towards lower atmospheric pressures in the past few years, storm surges can become more dangerous and volatile, causing flooding and high winds. This is something that San Juan also needs to be wary of.
Hurricane Maria was a Category 4 storm, and it saw about 3 feet of rain come down, as well as Category 5 winds, which caused almost total collapse in their electrical and water systems. These effects are still being felt right now across the island, including in San Juan, and the capital didn't even see the eye of the storm. As the likelihood of future events of similar magnitude increase, the struggle to find resiliency strategies for food, water, and power is integral to the future of this island. It's really important to the future of the island that the actions of local municipalities be effective, as the help offered by the federal government was inadequate. They may even need to turn to non-governmental organizations and the private sector for developing resiliency strategies.
San Juan is not the only city devastated by Hurricane Maria. Hurricane Maria was a hurricane that devastated Dominica, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico in September 2017. For U.S. Virgin Islands, nearly a month after the hurricane, electricity had been restored to only 16% of people in St. Thomas and 1.6% of people in St. Croix. 3 months after Maria, about half the entire U.S. territory still had no power, and 25% of the U.S. territory had no cell service. As for Dominic, Maria wrought catastrophic damage to the entirety of Dominica, which suffered an island-wide communication blackout. Much of the housing stock and infrastructure were left beyond repair, while the island's lush vegetation was practically eradicated.
Puerto Rico received little federal aid in the aftermaths of Hurricane Irma and Maria. Governor Ricardo Rossello requested $139 billion, but only received $80 billion in federal funding. And the federal aid and insurance Puerto Rico has received has only covered 24% of the losses from the hurricanes. The island will have a long journey back to economic stability because in addition to the pre-existing debt and the initial damages from the storm, the hurricanes caused the GDP of Puerto Rico to be reduced by 8%, caused 10% of businesses on the island to close, and caused 40% of residents to earn less than in the year before Hurricanes Irma and Maria hit. As services return, the island and San Juan in particular need tourists to visit, stay in hotels, eat at restaurants, and shop at local stores.
So here are some of the projected water trends. There's going to be less available water due to decreased annual rainfall, as well as higher evaporation rates. And there's a chance of salinization of groundwater from the rising sea level, as well as increased risk of pollutants like nutrients, organics, pathogens, thermal pollution, etc. Droughts like the one in 2015 might become more common. This drought brought water restrictions and cutoffs to some parts of the island. Most of Puerto Rico's water is used for residential consumption, so improvements in the existing water system will likely be aimed at adaptation to new weather patterns. The ability to handle less frequent but heavier flows and man-made reservoirs in the island's higher elevations could be a solution to the problem. So after being severely destabilized by the hurricane, San Juan's electrical system is in desperate need for a modern, sustainable makeover. Currently, they're looking at solar technology with Resilient Powered Puerto Rico, the Clinton and Solar Foundation's Solar Saves Lives organization. They're also looking at microgrids, which allow for certain parts of the grids to be taken off of the main one if they go down, as well as if the main grid goes down, then individual microgrids can disconnect from that and continue operating autonomously. The AES Corporation has made a plan for a network of these solar-powered grids, which would offer electricity at $50 per megawatt hour versus $150 per fossil fuel generated energy. Building plants more inland to prepare for sea level rise, as well as increased electricity demand as temperatures rise, will also need to be implemented. So there's a ton of room for improvement in their food production system. Right now they're extremely dependent on imported food. Around 75 to 85% of their food is not grown on the island. Without the food reaching the ports, they'll only have enough food for the island to last an estimated 15 days. They're also facing reductions in crop yields due to the heat stress associated with climate change. They will need to turn around their declining food production and make more efficient use of underutilized land. Specifically, the land that has been designated as agricultural reserves is not being used nearly efficiently enough. Agriculture's demand for water is expected to rise because of drier soils. They need to begin cultivating drought-resistant plants. For example, at the University of Puerto Rico, they're researching drought-resistant varieties of beans, as well as micromanaging irrigation water use. Incentives and education for farmers will be really helpful for increasing self-sufficiency in the case of future emergencies.
San Juan was still recovering from Hurricane Emma when it was pumped by Hurricane Maria. After such extreme climate events, the region needs immediate and long-term help. Fortunately, there are so many people trying to help this city. United Nations mobilized over $1.3 billion in pledge and more than $1 billion in loans and debt relief to help Caribbean nations recover from the strong hurricanes. And other nations and global charities also contribute to the recovery of San Juan. After Hurricane Emma, America Cares airlifted 1.8 billion worth of medicine and supplies to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Another organization, Heart to Heart International, also had sent thousands of health and hygiene kits.
Since Hurricane Maria struck in September of 2017, the entire island has been under a huge rebuilding process. With hurricanes of this magnitude becoming more and more frequent, island countries such as Puerto Rico are going to be forced with a tough decision sometime in the near future. Option 1, which San Juan and Puerto Rico is currently undertaking, rebuild and correct. Infrastructure must first be repaired and brought up to what it was previous of the disaster, and buildings that are rebuilt must be made safer, stronger, and more environmentally resistant to protect their inhabitants. The other, much less popular option is to leave the country entirely. San Juan and the entire country was devastated in 2017. The damages were astronomical in cost, and rebuilding is going to be a multi-year process, and things may or may not get back to what they were. While it is sad for people to leave a country, it may be easier and more cost-effective in the near future. With disasters becoming stronger and stronger, it may not be safe to inhabit islands like these, let alone rebuild and try to start over. In the rebuilding of Puerto Rico, there's a big effort to re-green the country. By increasing a natural presence, the island is stronger and can help keep wind and water at bay. Natural defenses like these are very important when strong winds or water strike, as they leave the populated areas much less vulnerable. Protecting the critical infrastructure in San Juan is all about defense. A study done in 2011 offered up that a 3-meter seawall would at least protect all airports from potential sea flooding. Raising this in light of the recent hurricane seems smart. This help prevents from both flooding and natural sea level rise from global warming. With 8 hospitals found to be within flooding risk, protection must be built around them, or if they no longer exist, they should be built inland away from the coast. While pulling critical infrastructure away from the coast may not help keep places like hospitals or nuclear reactors supplied, it will certainly keep them safer when a natural disaster strikes. The key for San Juan's rebuilding is going to be to have a better disaster plan. We've already seen how a hurricane is able to damage the city. More importantly, we saw how ill-prepared we were to deal with this situation. By creating a stronger plan for when disaster hits, most importantly, by giving the population safe havens to retreat to, the country will be ready to face the next big natural disaster. Prevention is great, but more likely than not, the city must be prepared for this to happen again. With a strong rebuild focused around protecting the critical infrastructure and ideally a kinder president, they should be ready.